Thanks for staying with us. You're watching WION The World is One. I'm Adhya Junesha and this is Speed News. Let's start with all the top stories making headlines today. UAE Minister Sultan Al Jaber said Strait of Hormuz belongs to the world and must be returned to the world, highlighting the significance of the strait. Sultan Al Jaber said that the waterway cannot operate under threat. Iranian state media said Iran is not currently planning to attend talks with the United States. Well, this after President Donald Trump ordered US negotiators to Pakistan just days before a ceasefire in West Asia, which has to expire. Well, the ongoing US blockade of Iranian port has been a significant sticking point in it. That issue is likely to be further exacerbated by Trump's Sunday announcement that an American destroyer had fired on and hit an Iranian ship that tried to evade it. Tensions between Iran and the US have escalated sharply in the Strait of Hormuz. In the latest, a US destroyer fired on and seized an Iranian-flagged cargo ship in the Gulf of Oman. According to the US Central Command, the Iranian vessel Tusk was transiting the North Arabian Sea and was en route to Iran's Bandar Abbas. CENTCOM says the vessel ignored multiple warnings over a 6-hour period, leading US missile destroyer USS Assuance to fire at the Iranian vessel's engine room. CENTCOM also said US Marines boarded the vessel and the ship is now in US custody. People took to streets in Tehran to show support for the Iranian government, saying they are not afraid of war. This against the backdrop of state media reports that Iran has rejected peace talks with the United States. The Israeli military said it has killed a person described as a militant who had crossed into an area of southern Lebanon which is still occupied by Israeli forces. This as an intense ceasefire in the Israel-Hezbollah conflict continues to hold. Earlier, Israel Defense Minister Israel Katz said he and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had instructed the army to act with full force, both on the ground and from the air, including during the ceasefire, in order to protect our soldiers in Lebanon from any threat. The country has also vowed to demolish homes it claims are used by Hezbollah, and state media reports that demolitions are currently underway. Israel has reopened a settlement in the occupied West Bank 2 decades after it was vacated as part of a major withdrawal plan. Israeli settlers have returned to Sanur settlement. Senior ministers and lawmakers gathered on a hilltop in northern West Bank. The finance minister Bezalel Smotrich declared the reopening as the end of what he called a criminal expulsion, referring to removal of settlers from the area in 2005. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un oversaw test launches of upgraded short-range ballistic missiles. State media reported that the test involved 5 launches of improved Hwasong-11LA ground-to-ground tactical ballistic missiles to evaluate the power and performance of new warheads, including cluster and fragmentation types. North Korea fired the missiles towards an island target zone about 136 kilometers away, striking an area of roughly 12.5 to 13 hectares with what the report described as high density, demonstrating the system's capability for concentrated suppression strikes. Still photographs released separately by state media KCNA showed Kim observing the launch alongside senior military officials and his daughter as he monitored the test from an observation post and later reviewed the results with his aides. 2 US officials and 2 Mexican officials assigned to combat cartel operations died in a car accident in the northern Mexican state of Chihuahua, according to the US Embassy. Video from Chihuahua State prosecutors showed reactors, barrels, tubs, gas tanks and sacks at a seized clandestine laboratory, where authorities said the officials had been taking part in an operation to destroy illegal drug production sites. On a post on X by US Ambassador to Mexico, Ronald Johnson wrote the deaths were a reminder of the risks faced by Mexican and US officials working to protect their communities. The Mexican victims were the director of the state's investigation agency and another officer, while no details were immediately available about the identities of the US officials. Netanyahu's corruption trial testimony is delayed again after a 2-month break. Jerusalem judges ruled that a different witness will testify this Monday instead of Prime Minister, meaning he likely won't take the stand until next week at the earliest. The Israeli PM had requested the delay, citing classified security and diplomatic reasons, while prosecutors opposed the move, arguing that Netanyahu must prioritize the court schedule to finish his cross-examination in the public interest. At least 8 children have been killed by a gunman in domestic violence-related shootings in the US city of Shreveport. The police said that 7 of the 8 killed were shooters' own children, while he also critically wounded the mother and killed one other child. All the children killed were aged between 1 to about 12 years old. The shooting occurred just after 6 a.m. local time on Sunday and is considered a domestic disturbance. The attacks began before sunrise in a neighborhood south of downtown Shreveport when the man named Shamar Elkins shot a woman at one home and then drove to the other location. US forces killed 3 men whom the military described as illicit drug smugglers in a strike on a boat in the Caribbean. Southern Command posted what it said was video of the strike on social media platform X, showing an explosion of a small boat traveling on open water. Southern Command said the boat was traveling on known narco-trafficking routes in the Caribbean. The US military has so far killed 157 alleged members or affiliates of drug organizations in 45 strikes against drug trafficking vessels in the Western Hemisphere, a senior US defense official said last month. A small plane crashed on Sunday in the yard of a home near Tampa, Florida, killing 1 person. The National Transportation Safety Board and Federal Aviation Administration have confirmed they are investigating the incident. Hundreds of supporters of Peru's popular Renewal Party gathered in central Lima, calling for the election results to be annulled, alleging fraud. Supporters of presidential candidate Rafael Lopez Aliaga held signs reading "No to Electoral Fraud" and "Defend Democracy." Results from Peru's presidential election showed such a tight race for second and third place that it could take weeks to finalize the top 2 candidates for the country's required runoff election in June. The remains of at least 50 infants and 6 adults were discovered after they had apparently been discarded at a cemetery in Trinidad and Tobago. The bodies were found at Cumuto Cemetery, about 40 kilometers from the capital port of Spain on Trinidad. Trinidad and Tobago has been struggling with surging crime, including deadly gang violence, which prompted authorities to extend an existing state of emergency last month. The head of Ukraine's patrol police, Yevhen Zhukov, resigned from his position. His resignation follows a deadly mass shooting in Kiev's district on April 18th, which resulted in 6 deaths and 14 injuries. Zhukov stepped down after social media footage surfaced showing 2 patrol officers allegedly fleeing the scene and abandoning civilians, including a child, during the attack. Ukrainian drones reportedly struck the Tuapse oil refinery in southern Russia's Krasnodar Krai during an overnight attack on April 20th. At least 2 storage tanks are said to be on fire, with flames visible from kilometers away. This marks the second major strike on the same site in recent weeks. Tuapse is a key Black Sea oil export hub for Russia, and repeated attacks there are seen as part of Ukraine's broader effort to disrupt energy infrastructure, which is linked to Moscow's war funding. Argentina's President Javier Milei declared that the joint US-Israel war against Iran was the right thing to do. Milei signed on to the so-called Isaac Accords aimed at deepening bilateral ties between Israel and Latin American countries. Togo hosted a high-level strategy meeting concerning Sahel states in its capital, Lomé, bringing together foreign ministers from Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali and Togo, as well as ECOWAS and United Nations officials. Well, the discussions focused on strengthening regional cooperation and redefining strategic approaches to the Sahel crisis. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung received a ceremonial welcome at the forecourt of Rashtrapati Bhavan in the national capital. President Draupadi Murmu and Prime Minister Narendra Modi were present at the welcome ceremony of the South Korean president, who was accompanied by the First Lady Kim Hae-kyung. After a ceremonial reception at Rashtrapati Bhavan, the South Korean president visited Rajghat to pay tribute to Mahatma Gandhi. The 3-day visit by the South Korean president marks the first time a South Korean leader has visited India in more than 8 years. India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval visited Riyadh, Saudi Arabia for an official visit focused on strengthening bilateral strategic and energy ties. Talks covered evolving developments in West Asia, including a potential second round of US-Iran talks and the broader regional security situation. In Uttar Pradesh, 2 accused involved in the violent protest during the labour movement were arrested, Himanshu Thakur and Satyam Verma. The accused were found to be involved in inciting activities and violence incidents during the labour strike in the Gautam Budh Nagar region. Police said both men are active members of a group identified as Mazdoor Bigul Dasta, a workers' union. In Manipur, tear gas was deployed by security personnel to break up a protest at Kakching Bazaar, where demonstrators had gathered to demand justice over the Trong Laubi incident as the situation grew increasingly volatile. The protest stems from a deadly attack on April 7th in Amoirang's Trong Laubai, Avung Leke locality, where suspected militants lobbed a bomb at a home. 2 children were killed in the blast while their mother sustained injuries. In Assam, heavy rain lashed parts of Guwahati, causing immediate and severe waterlogging and flash floods in several areas. The brief but intense downpour resulted in knee-deep waters, disrupting traffic and normal life in multiple locations across the city. In the wake of severe waterlogging and flash floods triggered by relentless rainfall, the administration has ordered the closure of all educational institutions across the city today. Paper lanterns carrying messages of remembrance, peace and hope floated across the lake Acetalalan in southern Mexico City on Saturday. Families, couples and other attendees gathered at the water's edge for a nighttime commemorative event. Pope Leo XIV met worshippers and leads prayers in the village of Muksima, around 110 kilometers from Luanda. Village of Muksima is home to a 16th century church that has become one of Southern Africa's most important pilgrimage sites. Blue Origin has successfully reused its New Glenn rocket for the first time but failed to deliver a communication satellite into its intended orbit. The launch was carried out for customer AST Space Mobile. The company said the rocket's upper stage placed the Bluebird 7 satellite into an orbit lower than planned. The satellite successfully separated from the rocket and powered on after deployment. However, the altitude is too low to sustain operations. As a result, the satellite will be deorbited and left to burn up in Earth's atmosphere. The mission marks a technical milestone for reusability, but a setback for commercial payload delivery.
Inside the capsule, and all 3 pairs.
Germany's Chancellor Friedrich Merz has called for greater regulatory freedom for industrial AI in the European Union. Merz said AI used in industry should face fewer restrictions than consumer-facing AI applications. He said he would push to ease the regulatory burden on AI across the European Union. Merz warned current rules are too restrictive for industrial AI development. He said industrial AI could be exempted from parts of the existing regulatory framework, while Germany is seeking to catch up with the US and China in the global AI race. The country is also looking to attract high-income jobs linked to AI development. Hackers have exploited a cross-chain bridge in a major attack on a decentralized finance system, or DeFi, draining nearly $300 million from crypto infrastructure. Well, the attack targeted a bridge built using Layer 0, which enables assets to move between different blockchains. Well, the hackers stole about 116,500 RSETH. Well, this marks RSETH, a derivative token which is linked to underlying locked Ether. Total losses are estimated at around $293 million, making it the largest DeFi hack of 2026. Asia-Pacific markets mostly moved higher despite escalating tensions between the US and Iran following a ship seizure in the Gulf of Oman, while Japan and South Korea led gains while China remained subdued and Australia stayed flat. Investors are cautiously optimistic even as geopolitical risks rise and oil prices climb. While the Strait of Hormuz remains a key concern, with disruptions threatening global supply and adding pressure to economic outlooks. Oil prices surged over 5% after a sharp drop last week as the Strait of Hormuz was closed again amid renewed US-Iran tensions. The rebound follows a seized Iranian vessel and stalled peace talks, raising fears over disrupted global supply. With conflicting claims over ceasefire violations, markets remain volatile as traders watch the critical oil route closely. The US dollar hit a one-week high as escalating tensions between the United States and Iran drove investors towards safe haven assets. But the move follows a ship seizure and stalled peace talks, raising fears of prolonged conflict. Currency markets reacted with the euro, pound and Australian dollar weakening, while oil prices surged sharply on supply concerns, which is linked to the Strait of Hormuz, keeping global markets on edge. Manchester City have blown the Premier League title race wide open by beating leaders Arsenal 2-1 on Sunday. Ryan Cherki scored the opening goal at the Etihad Stadium, but Arsenal's Kai Havertz equalised for the Gunners. However, star striker Erling Haaland scored the decisive goal in the second half to secure a huge win for Pep Guardiola's side. City will have the chance to overtake Arsenal by beating second from bottom Burnley on Wednesday. Bayern Munich secured their 35th German league title by beating Stuttgart 4-2 on Sunday. That victory opened up an unassailable lead with 4 games to play in the season. The result sent Bayern's 15 points clear of second-placed Borussia Dortmund. Well, the Bavarians have now won the Bundesliga title in 13 of the last 14 seasons. They also have the chance to complete the treble. Well, Bayern are in the semi-finals of the German Cup and face PSG in the Champions League semi-finals. Indian actors Deepika Padukone and Ranveer Singh have delighted fans by officially announcing they are expecting their second child. The couple shared the happy news via a heartwarming post on social media. Well, the couple are already proud parents of Dua Padukone Singh. The pair, who famously tied the knot in Italy in the year 2018, recently welcomed their first child in September 2024.